welcome to the I'm You podcast. Hey, before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, and leave me a comment. I love to hear what you guys have to say. So today, I want to cover a bunch of stuff, and I'll apologize up front. This is going to be kind of a long one, not usual for me, but there are so many things happening all over the world in such a quick order that there's no way I would have time to do a podcast on each and every one of them before they were old news. So I'm going to try to combine a lot of things today. So I apologize that it's going to be a little long, but I hope you can struggle with me as long as you can stand me. Anyway, the first thing, of course, which is all in the news, is Venezuela. Trump got Maduro.
A remarkable and historic scene tonight in New York. Federal agents escorting off a U.S. government aircraft the now former president of Venezuela. This after Nicolas Maduro and his wife Celia Flores had been captured during a U.S. military raid on the presidential palace in the Venezuelan capital of Caracas. President Trump announcing the extraction of Maduro, who was taken to the United States to face federal charges of narco-terrorism.
The illegitimate dictator Maduro was the kingpin of a vast criminal network responsible for trafficking colossal amounts of deadly and illicit drugs into the United States, responsible for the deaths of countless Americans.
Something no other president. We've been bitching and moaning about this guy for 30 years, maybe longer, if you add Hugo Chavez in there. And every president knows he's been putting drugs into our country, weapons. He's sending, at least lately, he's sending the Tren de Aragua gangsters to commit crimes in the United States, trying to destabilize our cities. This guy is one mother effing bad guy. And Trump was the only guy who had the balls to go and take him. I don't know about you guys, but this is exactly what I voted for. So 150 aircraft, CIA, FBI, DOJ, and Delta Force snagged this bastard.
On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission.
It was really the pinnacle of a military operation. Even other countries are going, what the hell? These guys dropped in. We blew up the airport so he couldn't get away. We bombed the military and barracks so he didn't have any reinforcements to come to his aid. And we blacked out the city using our cyber technology. Our Delta Force boys drop in there and voila, out comes Maduro and his wife. They're on a plane in 2 hours and in the United States in a lockup in Brooklyn within 12 hours. China and Russia are like, what?
What?
I think a lot of despots and of our enemies around the world are going to have a second look at their attitude toward the president, because now they know when Trump says something, he means it. And if he says he's going to do something, he's going to do it. And if he tells you to stop doing something, it would be in your best interest to stop doing that. I'm kind of elated. It's weird. It's kind of to a weird extent, like a little kid who gets the exact toy I wanted for Christmas. Because Trump has done so many of these things, rescuing our hostages all over the world, stopping 8 wars, I believe it is now. He's working on number 9, not going that well. But our taxes, the border, I mean, you name it. This guy is a juggernaut. And as such, it's getting hard for guys like me who want to tell you about all this stuff to actually keep up. He had multiple opportunities to take a pass, to get out of Venezuela. I believe Russia, Belarus, maybe Cuba, and I heard something about China, but those two I'm not exactly sure of. But they offered him exile. And they weren't offering him an apartment in Moscow. They were offering him a compound with servants. This guy would have lived like a king for the rest of his life, and he chose to try to be a hard ass against Donald Trump? Damn! Are you kidding me? Well, he effed around and he found out, folks. When I'm starting to get into the reason for all this happening, we have to go back really to the 1970s. So in the 1970s, Venezuela was one of the richest countries in the world. Seriously. I think they were only second or third to the United States because of their amazing and huge oil reserves. They were pumping, I believe, about 5 million gallons a day, or I'm sorry, barrels a day of oil. And of course, after socialism, they're pumping less than 1 million barrels a day because socialism is so good. But they were doing so well in the 70s and into the 80s, or the late 70s, when we all had what? The gas crisis. Anybody but me remember gas lines? You're old, by the way, if you do. But Venezuela didn't escape that either. So their oil market kind of took a tank. And then as the economy started slipping, here comes Hugo Chavez. And he says, look, these evil, rich corporations and Americans who are running the oil fields and rich Venezuelans are taking advantage of you. They're taking everything and leaving you with nothing. Does that sound a little familiar, folks? Anyway, I digress. And Chavez was able to make ignorant voters in Venezuela, and they were hurting, so they were ready to believe anything, I think, at that point. But of course, Chavez gets in. He doesn't make things better. He doesn't increase freedom. He doesn't get them jobs. He establishes socialism. And it's one of the perfect examples. They were lured into it, as I said, by Chavez because they were in a downturn. They couldn't look at the future. They couldn't see that things go up and things go down, and they just wanted to take the first lifeboat they saw. And they've been paying for it now for 45, almost 50 years. He brought in socialism. He told them where they could work. He told them how much money they could make. And by the way, it wasn't much. While he was getting ultra rich, multi-billionaire. That's what socialism does, folks. We keep trying to tell Democrats and the left that's what socialism does. So now they used to sit in their 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom homes, maybe taking a dip in the pool. Now they're eating their pets. I mean, Fido empanadas, anybody? Eating their pets, digging through the garbage to feed their children any scraps they might find. That's what socialism does. It has always done it every single time it's been tried in history, which has been a lot of times over the last 100 to 200 years. And it fails. Not only does it fail, though, it's not that it fails as for economics. It fails because it crushes people. It crushes societies. It just doesn't create the jobs and all the prosperity that the socialist who's running, of course, says, but it crushes countries. 100 million people have died because of socialism in the last century. And now somehow in America, we've got, I don't know, 25% of the population think, let's give that a try. It's failed. Hundreds of millions of people have died. They're eating their shoes and their pets. But hey, they just weren't doing it right. That's the typical excuse when socialists try to gain power. It's these guys didn't do it right, even though all of them apparently didn't do it right and had no idea how to do the real socialism. The thing about Maduro, too, going back to the raid, this guy was flooding our country with drugs, and Europe, by the way. Cocaine, heroin. He wasn't the big guy on fentanyl, but he still pushed it along. When Joe Biden came in and opened up the borders, he opened up his insane asylums and all the jails. He sent us Tren de Aragua. Hugo Chavez is the leader of Tren de Aragua and is also a major player in a cartel, one of the drug cartels that he gets the cocaine from, and he's the trans shipper. So this guy is a bad guy. He's been personally responsible for killing tens of thousands, maybe hundreds of thousands of Americans with drug overdoses. He traffics humans. He traffics children. There's no reason for anybody to be sympathetic to this guy. You know, we're hoping now that when our enemies have seen this, that they're going to understand now that when Trump says something, he means it. the president of Colombia, the mullahs, in Iran are shitting themselves right now. Now, Trump already taught the mullahs in Iran a lesson, but it was just one part of the lesson. And as most of you know probably by now, he literally came out a couple of days ago and told them, because there's an uprising now in Iran. Our strike against their nuclear program, the Midnight Hammer Strike, another pinnacle, I thought that was the pinnacle of military operation, but along comes Venezuela and says, hold my beer. Anyway, back to that. The mullahs now know, none of our presidents, all the way back, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, they all knew Iran was trying to make a nuclear weapon and did nothing about it. Barack Obama gave him hundreds of billions of dollars of cash flown in the middle of the night because he wanted to make that ridiculous Iran deal. Which, by the way, if anybody bothered to read it back in the day, it actually gave them permission after 10 years of slowing down their enrichment. After 10 years, it was Katie bar the door. They could do whatever they wanted to do. That was his solution to nuclear weapons in a terrorist state. Joe Biden did nothing. He also wanted to get back into the Iran deal, even though Iran was flipping him the middle finger almost every time he spoke about making peace with them. They didn't want to make peace with him. Okay, I don't know what they had to do, if they had to come over here and actually stick their middle finger up the old man's nose. At least it would be a different finger than his. But he still thought he was going to make some kind of deal. And Trump, like a normal human being, said, nah, they're getting too close. I told them to stop. They didn't stop. Kaboom. So now Iran knows when Trump says something, he means it. And because of Midnight Hammer, the Iranian people are rising up. Their economy is in free fall. You think our 2.7 inflation is bad? With all the leftists out on the street screaming about affordability, and our congressmen, our Democrat congressmen saying we can't afford anything, even though they caused it, but that's a whole nother story. They have 40% inflation. 40%. Can you imagine that? And so the citizens have said, okay, that's it. They're back on the streets like they were in 2009 when Barack Obama ignored them. Well, Trump's not ignoring them. He put out a message the other day telling the mullahs, if you start killing these people in the streets, the United States is, and I quote, locked and loaded. So don't do it if you know what's good for you. And after Midnight Hammer, I'm hoping they'll take this to heart. So I want to talk about socialism in the United States. It's really not a new thing. Do you know that the Pilgrims tried socialism? No, I'm not kidding. The Pilgrims tried socialism. When they came over, they tried a version of socialism. Historically, it was called the Tragedy of the Commons. What they did was they would assign each family a task. So in other words, if you're the Jones family, you raised corn. If you were the Smiths, you raised pigs. If you were, I don't know, the Andersons, that's really not an English name, but let's just go with it. You might grow wheat for bread. Another family might grow lumber and cut down lumber and provide lumber. Okay, sounds great, right? They didn't do a straight barter system. What they did was everybody contributed to the town. So the people who grew the corn brought the corn to town. People who grew the wheat brought the wheat to town. Everybody was involved. Everybody got their share. The guy who cut the wood, there was wood to build houses and wells and whatever else you needed to build. Well, guess what? Something intruded. A virus that we're all well aware of had fallen upon the colonists. It was called, wait for it, human nature. Yes, human nature. All of a sudden, Mr. Bill decided, hey, I'm getting corn and wheat and lumber. Raising these pigs sucks. I don't want to do that. So he stopped raising the pigs. So then it's like, well, people don't have enough meat. And then the other guy said, well, wait a minute. If he's not going to raise the pigs, why should I grow the wheat? And if that guy's not going to grow the wheat, why should I grow the corn? Well, you get the idea. The settlement failed. they had to turn around and make it a barter system. You didn't get anything unless you gave somebody else something. Now, we've just substituted that something for money. For companies who build things and provide services that we want, we give them money, they give us the service or the product. Well, the Pilgrims, the very first inhabitants of the New World, other than the indigenous people, the first thing they wanted to do was socialism. So it's literally, what would that be now? 300 years old? Trying socialism? And it's been tried over and over and over. The Soviet Union, Cuba, Venezuela eventually, and look what happened. They all failed. The Soviet Union under Stalin, he killed 40 million people under his socialist regime because they weren't towing the line basically with socialism. So he just murdered them. Any political activists, anybody challenging him in elections, quote unquote, all of a sudden turned up dead or never turned up at all. This is what happens. Chavez did the same thing. Maria Machado is somewhere in Europe, I believe, who won the last election, and she has to hide because he tried to have her killed, and he still would if he was still there today. And I'm not so sure that some of his generals and some of the people who are still there won't try to get that done. But again, Trump is letting the vice president of Venezuela run the show for now. I'm a little concerned about it, but he also told her, if you pull any of that crap, she made a statement when she was in Russia, I believe, how evil it was and the colonists and blah, 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 and unconstitutional against international law before she came back to Venezuela. And he said, okay, you're going to run this place until we get a new government established. And he told her, you pull any of that bullshit you were doing in Russia, if I see even an inkling of you running this country like Maduro did, and you're going to be wishing you were Maduro, because bad things are going to happen to you. And he said, actually, much worse than happened to Nicolas Maduro. So hopefully she's got that message. She's certainly an eyewitness to his veracity. So, and I hope she doesn't think she's going to take back Venezuela, because her days are numbered if she thinks that. Hopefully she'll just manage the country until they can get new elections. Although I think they should just install Maria Machado. She actually won the election. Now, Donald Trump said something about she didn't have the respect of the people, which I thought was kind of an odd thing to say to a person who won a national election. So obviously the majority of the people respected her and trusted her. But we'll see how that pans out. But it's also amazing, first of all, and this is just perfect, because it's like, if you haven't noticed the similarities to the things Mondami is saying in New York, then you're not listening. Okay, he said the same thing. Affordability, affordability. All the rich people are taking the money and leaving you with nothing. I'm going to make sure you have free rent and free buses, free childcare. And guess what? They elected him. Now, this is a man who's never done anything in his entire life. Literally, he's 35-year-old. He's never had a job, not so much as scooping ice cream at a Baskin-Robbins, nothing. He even bragged about, during the campaign, that he didn't need to get a job because he would count on his mommy and daddy to give him money if he needed it. Listen to that. Now, this is Mr. Socialist, okay? Mr. Rich people shouldn't have money, and he is the son of two very rich people who give him money to do whatever he wants. He's actually living in a rent-controlled apartment. This guy has a ton of dough through his parents, and he is living in a rent-controlled apartment. He's taking up a rent-controlled apartment from one of the poor people or less fortunate people who could use that apartment. This clown openly bragged about having a rent-controlled apartment. That's how stupid the people of New York City are. It is absolutely amazing that anybody with two brain cells connected actually thought he could make all the buses free. That he could shut down rent increases from landlords and tell them how to run their properties, which, of course, New York's been kind of doing for a while, but they had the ability every year to raise the rents a certain percentage. Now, Mondami says, no more. No matter how much inflation there is, no matter how much your materials to keep that apartment in good shape is, you can't raise the rent. And by the way, then I'm going to punish you for not keeping up the apartment. You're going to be a slumlord. Because I didn't allow you to make the money to actually make the repairs, I'm going to punish you for not making. Right, did anybody get that? Because I'm not sure even I got that.
What you just said is one of the most insanely idiotic things I have ever heard. At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought. Everyone in this room is now dumber for having listened to it. I award you no points, and may God have mercy on your soul.
But I think you understand what I'm saying. This guy is so full of crap, his eyes are brown. Actually, his eyes are probably already brown. But now listen to this. Now, Mondami came out after the assault on Venezuela and the capture of Maduro and called Trump's actions illegal and unconstitutional.
I called the president and spoke with him directly to register my opposition to this act and to make clear that it was an opposition based on being opposed to a pursuit of regime change, to the violation of federal and international law, and a desire to see that be consistent each and every day.
First of all, like he thought Trump gave a shit about what he thinks. And my first thought was, oh, and he also said, because this doesn't just affect Venezuela, it affects New York City because of our large Venezuelan population. And I'm like, what?
Hold up. Wait a minute. Something ain't right.
Venezuelans in New York and all over the country and all over the world for that matter are literally dancing in the streets.
Venezuela. ¿Listo?
Tonight, joyful cheers echo through the streets of Katy, the community gathering together with flags in hand to celebrate the capture and removal of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro by U.S. forces overnight.
Nuestro país sea libre.
Among those deeply impacted is Lizette Labarca. She left Venezuela 33 years ago and has been waiting for this moment.
It's real. It's happening. Now it's happening. And we pray for that.
What's his problem? What does he think is going to hurt? Are they dancing too hard? Maybe they'll get tired from celebrating? I mean, like I said, this guy, he literally doesn't know any. It's really weird because you see politicians all the time that maybe they had an expertise. They were a lawyer. They were in finance. You know, maybe they were in real estate. So they kind of know how business works. They kind of know or they were community organizers. So they know how people are. But they never stop and think about what they say. This guy literally knows nothing. I mean, that statement alone should disqualify him from being a leader of anything, let alone the largest city in the country. He doesn't know shit about the Constitution, or the law for that matter. He's been a citizen for only 7 years. He's a smarmy little mama's boy, Nepo baby, and has never had a real job, or for that matter, any job. Like anybody gives a shit about what this little pipsqueak thinks. Just sit down, little man, and work on destroying New York City. The grown-ups will handle the rest of the world. Now, as usual, the Democrats just come running.
This is about taking over and running another country.
This is illegal. It's unjustified.
Clearly, this is wildly illegal. This is a president who has been operating illegally since he was sworn into office, stealing from the American people.
This is the worst form of gunboat diplomacy that proceeds to create a lot of problems for the United States.
You've never met a despot, a drug dealer, a criminal that they didn't want to support. These morons in the Democrat Party, which is quickly becoming most of them, only complain because they hate Trump. We all know that if Barack Obama or Joe Biden had made this attack or invasion and arrested Maduro, they would have built a golden statue of either one of them in the rotunda of the Congress. He would have been, nominated for sainthood by the Pope. Yeah, I wonder if Chris Van Holland is going to go to the lockup in Brooklyn and have margaritas with Maduro. Would anybody really be surprised? It's amazing how Democrats have no problem with America defending other countries and their borders, but not our own. Joe Biden basically gave a blank check to Ukraine for the entire war, and I didn't hear a peep out of any Democrat. And I kind of support the Ukrainians against the Russians. I don't think they should surrender, but again, that's going to be a different podcast. But Joe Biden just let them have everything, all the money they wanted, but not the weapons they needed to win. Just think about it. People around the world that are condemning Trump are the Russians, the Chinese, Iran, Cuba, and American Democrats. This just illustrates something I've been saying for a while now. This current Democrat Party is the most un-American, anti-American party in the history of the United States. They have supported almost every criminal and despot in the world as soon as Trump says he doesn't like them. I mean, remember the fight to keep Albrego Garcia here? A man who was a wife beater, a drug trafficker, a child sex trafficker. They called him the Maryland Dad. Not the scum-sucking, wife-beating, illegitimate drug runner piece of shit, which should have been his legal name. But you know the one thing I never hear them defending? Us. Also, the Democrats conveniently choose not to understand that this action is actually not just good for the people of the United States, it's good for the people of the world and South America, and specifically Venezuelans. It will shut down the influence of Russia, China, and Iran. Those countries will no longer have any influence in repressing the people of that country anymore. Venezuela will no longer be his proxy to send criminals and drugs around the world into the United States to cause chaos in our cities and kill American citizens. This action actually achieves two major goals. Freedom for Venezuelans, which I kind of think is a big deal, and stopping narcotics from coming into the United States. Exactly which one of those things do Democrats not want? Which one are they unhappy about? I do have to say I'm concerned, though, that the president is putting some kind of faith in this vice president of Venezuela, who was personally appointed by Maduro. And she was a Hugo Chavez sycophant before that. Why do I think she's not going to be on board with this whole freedom thing and not trafficking drugs? So as I mentioned before, Trump has told her, though, if she starts any of the crap, if she's not on board, like that announcement she made in Russia, how this was unconstitutional and illegal against international law and Trump sucks, she's back in her chair like a little puppy dog that she should be. So Now, I am comforted by the fact that I am absolutely certain she's scared shitless to pull any of that bullshit on Trump right now. But I have to say, if he's giving her some kind of respect that she doesn't deserve and he's going to let her lead this country, she better lead this country to new elections in about 3 weeks, or she needs to go. This president is a man of action. And I know for most of you listening to me, if not all, this is what we voted for. This is exactly what we voted for. No more pussyfooting around, no more diplomacy, no more letters of condemnation when some despot kills 100 people. It's almost surreal to me because I'm so used to those things. You know, even George W. Bush, when Russia took Georgia, I believe, he issued a letter of condemnation in the strongest possible terms, though. So take that, Putin. You know, that kind of crap. Obama was the same way. He was about as feckless as you could possibly be, letting Russia again take Crimea, their first shot at Ukraine. And of course, Joe Biden, he just kissed everybody's ass. He stayed in the basement. He popped up every now and again to make a fool of himself, but he never really did anything. He gave the Iranians permission to sell their oil, which funded all the terrorism in the last 5 years. Good job, Joe. It is absolutely unbelievable. But we're hopefully out of this. And I hope whoever takes over for Trump 3 years from now is exactly the same kind of person. And I think JD might be. He might be. But it's hard to look at anybody and think they're really like Trump completely. But all I want is a man who stands up like a man and says, do this or else. And then there's actually an or else. Well, we'll see how this plays out. This could be one of his biggest triumphs, or it could be a total failure if for some reason Venezuela falls back into the hands of the people who are running it under Maduro. Remember, he had hundreds of generals and cabinet members. They were all on board. Till all those people are gone or dead, and the vice president is no longer with us. Now, I don't mean kill her necessarily, but is out of office, and they have an actual democratic election and get a new person. Again, they should just put in Machado. She won. Anyway, so we're going to see how it works out. But I had to put in my 2 cents right away because so much is going on. And just to see our Democrats once again coming to the defense of the bad guys.
Go along with Donald Trump on Venezuela, Americans will pay the price in blood and in treasure, while Republicans could very well pay the price politically.
This wasn't a law enforcement action. They're lying to the American people when they say that. It was an unprecedented military action.
This all started in early September around drugs. Never mind that, the drugs that kill Americans are fentanyl, not the cocaine that comes out of Venezuela. But look, I think you have to take the president at his word. 22 times in his press conference did he use the word oil. Okay.
Hands up, Venezuela! Hands up, Venezuela! Vive President Maduro! La lucha sigue!
It's so disheartening. And then knowing that even though they do that, Democrats, most of the Democrats in the country will still vote for these people. The very people who ruined their lives for 5 years, they'll vote for them. Okay, so next, the Somali fraud in Minnesota. I was trying to make notes about this, and I really had a hard time finding a place to begin because it's so convoluted. It is so widespread. This isn't just a little trickle of a half a dozen daycare centers stealing money. There are probably hundreds, if not thousands, of people in Minnesota, mostly Somalis, who we let come here to save them from their shithole country where they were destined to die, if not by military death, by starvation. It seems like most all of the Somali population there is engaged in criminal behavior. I mean, what we're hearing most about, of course, is the child cares who don't have any children in them, are not taking care of anybody. Some of them don't even have an address. Some are in empty buildings, yet they're getting, 1.7 million was one, 1.9 million was another, 1.8 million was another, who never had any children in them. Do you think it's only those three? No, there are hundreds, maybe thousands. And we haven't even gotten on to yet, which is going to be next, is the food banks. Feed Our Future was the big one that they busted. Feed Our Future. Yeah, we're feeding 11,000 people a week. Wow, that's pretty amazing. I mean, how do you squeeze in like 1,500 people a day into a little building with 3 rows of tables? I don't know. Must be very organized. Anyway, the reality is, of course, there was no people there. They didn't feed anybody. The money went to luxury homes, jewelry. You may have seen the famous video now of a Somali guy in the Bahamas with his girlfriend with like a $750,000 ring on his finger. The trip was probably 50 grand, and bragging about his 2-story home back in Minnesota. That's what we're getting.
But wait, there's more.
So the food banks will be next. After that, help for the homeless. Now, as a Californian, it's hard for me to really say a lot about this, although I obviously hate corruption anywhere, but we're the most corrupt state in the union by far when it comes to the homeless. I mean, by far. I mean, if you think Minnesota is the only one doing this, again, you've got to perk up a little there, champ. This is going on all over every blue state in the country. In my opinion, every blue state in the country is probably wrought with this fraud. Look at, as I said, look at California homeless. Gavin Newsom has spent $24 billion on the homeless.
What we call a 10-year plan to end chronic homeless in San Francisco.
How are you going to solve homelessness? What are you going to do as a new mayor? And I say, well, what are you going to do?
Focus on a housing first model, direct access to housing. Shelter, solve sleep, housing with wraparound and support services, solve homelessness. Homelessness absolutely can be solved.
Laid out a detailed homeless strategy. There's been no intentionality on homelessness in this state for decades. It's not been a focus.
I don't think we can solve homelessness. I know we can solve homelessness. We will reduce street homelessness quickly and humanely through emergency action. The highest investment the state's ever made is $1 billion on homelessness. We are poised to pass a budget in the next few hours that will provide $12 billion of investment. I can literally quantify 58,000 people that we got off the streets last year, and none of you would believe it.
This state has not made progress in the last 2 decades as it relates to homelessness.
Why? We're not interested in funding failure. We're not interested in failing more efficiently when it comes to the issue of homelessness and the crisis on the street.
Over the 8 years, I guess, or 7 years, whatever it is, that he's been governor, and guess what? We have more homeless. How did that happen? How do we get more homeless when you're spending $24 billion to help people become not homeless? Oh, and big surprise, when he's asked where the money went, he can't tell us. 24 billion. Just think about that now. Think of what you could do with 24 billion. Think of what you could do with, I don't know, 1 billion. Think of what you could do with 1 million. 24 billion, he could just give, I think, is it 24,000 people $1 million? I think that'd perk up the economy. I think that would do great things for Californians. And you think that's it? We got to talk about the bullet train. The bullet train to nowhere. 11 years they've been working on it. 11 years they've been working on it. $17 billion they've paid. So you're thinking, wow, they must be almost done with that great high-speed railroad between Fresno and Bakersfield, because that's where we all want to go, of course, right? Nope. Not 1 mile of track has been laid. Not one. There's a bunch of dirt berms they've shoveled and bulldozed up along the path. There's not a car been manufactured or put on, well, they couldn't put them on the track because there's no track.
What a load of shit.
So when we talk about fraud and corruption, Minneapolis and Minnesota are not alone. But they have become the canary in the coal mine. They're in focus now. And the worst part of this, I think, is, first of all, the ungrateful Somali assholes that we brought in came in basically to rip us off and become wealthy on our tax money. You know, most of us, I don't know, 89% of the country aren't rich. It's probably more like 90 or 90 plus of the aren't rich. We don't get to go on $50,000 Caribbean vacations. We don't wear $750,000 rings or live in a $2 million mansion. But these guys do. But not only are they ripping us off, which is just unbelievable to me, they're actually doing a thing called fraud tourism. Have you ever heard of that? Fraud tourism. That means they're calling back to Somalia and asking their friends and their family, come on over. You can get in on this daycare thing. You can get in on this Medicaid thing. Because you know Medicaid, there must be multiple billions stolen from that too. Because HHS has already found tens of thousands of people on Medicaid who shouldn't be on Medicaid, including dead people, by the way, whose relatives are collecting those checks. So warm up a cell for those guys, fellas. Anyway, it's called fraud tourism. They actually have a name for it. Yeah, look how easy we screwed the Americans. Look how easy we stole their money. Get over here quick while you can get a bite. Wet your beak. What kind of an idiot are you? Why would you stay in that God-forsaken sand trap, being burned by the hot sun and starving to death? Get over here and get yourself a house and a car, a Mercedes maybe. I'm just beyond furious. And what makes me even more angry, we spilled our blood in Somalia trying to help these morons who obviously don't deserve it. I want them out of the country, not just prosecuted, not just jailed, because I want that too, but the ones they can't prosecute or after they get out of jail, they go, never to return again. I want all of them gone. Joe Biden gave 30,000, maybe 40,000 Somalis the refugee status, which means they could work, but they're not working. The only thing they're working at is stealing, putting together like RICO organizations to steal. And we're going to find out, by the way. You're going to see that. Mark my words. You're going to see some of the people in the daycare also involved in the food banks, also involved in the homeless issues, also involved in Medicaid and Medicare fraud. You're going to see this. We're going to find that there's a huge network there, mostly Somalis. And I don't give a rat's ass if you call me racist, because that doesn't work anymore. Crime is crime. And if you commit a crime, whether you're black, white, Asian, purple, or green, you gotta go. Either to the can or back home and stay there. This is unconscionable. And you wanna know something? I am absolutely positively convinced, in my humble opinion, in my constitutionally approved opinion, that Tim Walz, Keith Ellison, and multiple Democrat politicians are in on the grift. And don't even start me on Ilhan Omar. This woman was worth about $30,000 last year. Matter of fact, at one point she was $60,000 in debt. You know what her net worth is now? 1 year. Think about it. How much could you possibly make in a year? If you got a raise at your job, maybe made some good investments, even Nancy Pelosi investments, she's worth 30 mil. From 60 grand in debt to $30 million. And she's just saying, well, you know, my husband is an investment advisor. So he must have went to investment school with Pelosi and kicked her ass. He must have been the valedictorian of investment school. And she's another one. We saved her family and brought her here from Somalia when they were starving in the streets, dying of thirst, being gunned down by Al-Shabaab and all the other terrorists in that country. She came here, worked her way to be a United States congressperson, and now all she does is shit all over this country. There is nothing she likes about this country. She thinks we're all racist, misogynist, homophobes, transphobes, Islamophobes, which, by the way, I am. I'm a total card-carrying, 100% Islamophobe. Islam has no place in the United States, and that's the end of it. It is simply not compatible with Western civilization. And I don't think for any civilization, by the way, except their own. Now, that's one subject I am going to have a future podcast on. I'm kind of working on it right now. But I really needed to get through all of these things because it's just, you know, the Democrats have torn our country apart in the last 5 years. And they've done it on purpose. I don't think any of them believe Trump is Hitler. I don't think any of them think he's a terrorist or think he colluded with Russia. I don't believe it for 1 minute. They use that as campaign grift, basically. I mean, They're already coming out in droves now saying his attack on Venezuela, it's unconstitutional. He shouldn't have done it. That was a sovereign country and a sovereign leaders.
This is about taking over and running another country.
This is illegal. It's unjustified.
Clearly, this is wildly illegal. This is a president who has been operating illegally since he was sworn into office, stealing from the American people.
This is the worst form of gunboat diplomacy that proceeds to create a lot of problems for the United States.
No, it wasn't. He was indicted for drug trafficking, murder, weapons charges in the United States 5 years ago. Of course, Joe Biden didn't do anything about it. And he rigged the election. 90-some countries don't recognize him as the president of Venezuela. He is a criminal. This was a law enforcement operation, plain and simple. But our Democrats right now, as usual, coming to the rescue for Nicolas Maduro.
This is about taking over and running another country.
This is illegal. It's unjustified.
Clearly, this is wildly illegal. This is a president who has been operating illegally since he was sworn into office, stealing from the American people.
This is the worst form of gunboat diplomacy that proceeds to create a lot of problems for the United States.
Like they did for the Maryland dad, like they're doing for all the illegal immigrant criminals that ICE is putting away and sending home. Are they attacking the criminals? No, they're attacking ICE.
The heated confrontation outside an ICE detention facility in New Jersey this month was captured on body cameras. You can see Democratic Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, there in the red jacket, in a scuffle with ICE agents. Tonight, the Justice Department has charged her with assault.
It should be the biggest story in the country. ICE agents are being attacked. Federal law enforcement is being attacked. It's happening all over the place. And it's really a problem because the Democrats are not stopping it and, in fact, are instigating it in so many ways.
I hope you guys saw my last podcast I put up last week was all about ICE. And again, about the Democrats. Always support the criminals and not the American citizens and the victims. At this point, I'm not sure what we're going to do. We just have to hope and pray that we keep electing people who really believe in America as a country, as a concept, and are willing to do whatever is necessary, legally of course, to fight for us. Democrats have given that up, and they openly admit it. They're not for America. They're for any other country that we're not for. It's really unbelievable. I know I've said that a lot. I hate to sound like a broken record, so I'll stop. But you all know exactly what I'm talking about. You all know exactly what I'm talking about. We need a new Democrat Party. And by the way, the Democrats need a new Democrat Party. I know a lot of Democrats who are just kind of normal people. Some of the few friends I haven't lost because of their TDS that are Democrats, we still have, shall I say, robust discussions online on Facebook and X. But we always end the conversation with, still love you, bud. Talk to you later. It's never, F you, get away from my life, don't ever call me again, I don't want to see you on the street or I'll beat you up. I mean, it's none of that. We don't exile our family members because of their politics.
This is already the most sad holiday season I think I will ever experience. Solely for the fact I have made the decision for myself and my fiance and our child to skip out on family holidays with my family that voted for Trump. And while I know this is the right decision for myself and my family, I have been depressed the past 10 days. Like, this is truly gut-wrenching. And it's not the fact that they are Republicans. It's the fact that they voted for Donald Trump, knowing who he is and what he is capable of. And I'm mourning the fact that my family are educated white people, and they still voted for him.
We don't kill 40-year friendships. One of mine is almost 50 years old, and they abandoned me just over Trump. 50 years of friendship, and I mean close friendship. Direct interaction on a regular basis with my family, together, visiting, having fun, going out. Trump gets in and I support him, bye-bye. And even those people, who, by the way, if they wanted to make amends, I still love them like I always have, and I would forgive them in a heartbeat. Even though I'm mad at them, I would forgive them in a heartbeat. And my best friend from that relationship actually sunk to the lowest level about a month and a half ago and pulled out the Hitler on me. That I was acting like Hitler in the 1930s because I didn't want trans men playing in women's sports or illegal alien criminals killing Americans. Which is kind of ironic, right? They're the ones killing people who don't agree with them. But I'm Hitler? I don't know. I think they need a little history brush up. Anyway, that's all I got for this on the fraud in Minnesota. But like I said, just wait. They've already getting whistleblowers in New York, Illinois, tons of them in California, and we're going to see it all over the place. And you mark my words. Although I think there's probably fraud, obviously, in red states too, of course, because you've always got criminals in every state. Being a Republican state doesn't mean you have no crime, but nothing like this. You're going to see vast networks of criminals. And like I said, RICO cases coming right and left. Hopefully this all gets done before Trump leaves office, because if for some reason JD doesn't get in or another Republican, you know Democrats are going to reverse every bit of what Trump has done. They're going to open the border again. They're going to shut down the jails, like Mondami has already said. He's shutting down Rikers Island. 7,000 criminal illegal aliens that, by the way, they won't turn over to ICE, who would be out of New York City. And New Yorkers voted for this clown who wants 7,000 people. And we're not talking about jaywalkers. We're talking about murderers, rapists, child molesters, people who assault old ladies on the street with a lead pipe. And he campaigned on letting them go and not turning them over to the government. And the New Yorker said, yeah, that sounds good. Yeah, I hope they don't kill me.
Emotional, damn it.
Well, you just wait, guys. Because they don't check your party credentials before they club you over the head or shoot you for your car. Anyway, guys, but after that, I hate to bum everybody out. And I know this is going to sound really weird, but even after all that, so many things in my head that are just really horrible for the American people, I'm still optimistic. I'm bullish on the country, because I think the American people, or at least the sane ones, are going to want to continue Trump's legacy, especially if it continues the way it is. I mean, it's only been a year, and this guy has about 57 major accomplishments at home and around the world. So if it continues like it is, I can't imagine them voting Democrat in 2028, but you never know. All right, so the last thing I wanted to talk about, and I'm getting so tired of this, I have to tell you, and I'm not going to talk that much about it, is the Ukraine war. Okay? And like I said, I'm not going to talk that much about it because I have a full podcast on the Ukraine war and President Trump's handling of it. And this is going to be one of the few times that I vehemently disagree. I don't know if that word is vehement is hard enough. I don't understand the way the President Trump is dealing with this, especially the respect. For some reason, he insists on giving Vladimir Putin, even after he murders women and children repeatedly. He bombs apartment buildings, hospitals, and the president still comes out and says, well, I know Vladimir wants peace. I know he really wants to stop this war. And I'm like, based on what?
What?
I mean, he's literally, while you're negotiating, apparently only with Zelensky, who seems to be trying to agree to something, Vladimir Putin is still sending 500 drones to bomb hospitals and apartment buildings, childcare centers, old folks' homes. He's not in the... Anybody else besides me notice this? Zelensky goes to the White House. They're negotiating. Yeah, we made great progress. And I'm like, wait a minute. Somebody's missing. And it's Putin. I mean, do you remember the Alaska summit that President came out after it was said we made great progress. We didn't agree on everything, but we're really getting close. And Vladimir Putin's, the wheels of his airplane didn't even touch down in Russia before he bombed a maternity hospital. The same night. That shows you how much respect he has for President Trump. And yet Trump is constantly coming out saying, we know Putin wants peace. Now, I have heard him the last couple of days say, I'm not really happy with him. I'm not really happy with him. But then 2 days from now, he'll come out and say, but I know he wants peace too. He's tired of the killing. No, he's not. He's lost, what now? Estimates could be anywhere from 1 million to 1.5 million Russian soldiers. And he's just still chugging along. There are rumors he's actually getting teenage boys now to join the military because he's running out of military-aged men. Some as young as 12 years old. Now, I don't know if they're doing combat or some kind of support, but we all know where this is going to end. When all the guys get killed, or if the Russian soldiers come to their senses and refuse to fight, he will send those children to the front lines to be blown to smithereens. This man is a war criminal, an insane war criminal. He needs to be stopped, whether it's his own countrymen who take him out. Unfortunately, we really can't do that because it would basically lead to World War III. But there's always hope. I always hope, kind of like in Iran, that the people of Russia, and especially the generals, his secretaries, his cabinet members, will finally say enough when their son is killed or their daughter is killed. You know what I mean? That the people of Russia will find out that he's basically sent to slaughter 1.5 million of their sons and husbands, uncles, brothers. He keeps a clamp on the news media, so I have to give the Russian people the benefit of the doubt that they just don't know how bad it is. But I'm not really sure about that. Like I said, I'm kind of giving them the benefit of the doubt. I couldn't imagine if an American president sent 1.5 million of our soldiers to slaughter, that he would even get up to, I don't know, 1,000 soldiers to slaughter before pitchforks and torches came out and he was impeached immediately and ran out of office, if not the country. It's just amazing that we still, this is the 21st century, everybody. It's not the 17th century or the 18th century or even the 19th century where countries could just decide, hey, I want your country, so give it to me or I'm going to blow the hell out of you. And they did. We had a constant state of war in the 1800s and the 1900s, it seems. But unfortunately, it looks like it might still be that way. You always think it's the 21st century. We really aren't going to do that kind of stuff, are we? Well, we are, apparently, and unfortunately, there's really not that much we can do about it. Because we can't, like I said, we can't attack Russia. But Trump can make it clear, especially since Medvedev, his little chicken shit sidekick, and Putin have both insinuated the use of nuclear weapons if they're losing too badly. Trump should make it crystal clear that, and I'd like to give him the speech verbatim, any nuclear weapon of any size, of any strength, detonated anywhere on Earth besides the pre-war boundaries of Russia will be considered an attack on the United States and the free world and will be met with an immediate and overwhelming nuclear response. Now, I know that sounds pretty radical, and that's one of the reasons we've kissed this guy's ass for so long. Everybody thinks he will do it. I don't think Vladimir Putin will want to be vaporized because he knows the first missile is coming right where he is, and we know where he is no matter how he tries to hide. We know exactly where this guy is every minute of the day, every day of every year, just like Nicolas Maduro. He thought he was going to a safe house. Well, guess what? So did the Delta Force. And we know how that turned out. But I think we need to make it clear to Putin, if we're going to let him just run roughshod, we need to make it clear that if he crosses a line, and Trump's the guy to do it, because he doesn't let people cross lines without consequences. If he crosses that line, even with a tactical nuke in Ukraine, that they're going to get fed our ICBMs, and a lot of them. I don't think Putin has the guts. He doesn't have the balls. He's a big talker because Europe shudders under his shadow every time this guy threatens them. Well, our president doesn't. And he needs to know that. And I think that will contain, I guess, which is what we've always been trying to do since he was the Soviet Union. But this guy wants Ukraine. He wants all of it. And he's not going to settle for part of it. Mark my words. And like I say, be on the lookout. Because I think my very next podcast after this is going to be about the Ukraine-Russia war. All right, guys. I hope you got a lot of info here. And for the 3 of you who made it to the end, I really appreciate it. And like I said, could you please like, share, subscribe, and maybe leave a comment? Because I really like hearing your feedback and what you really think about all this. And if you disagree with me, great. That's great too. Call me an asshole. Telling me I'm crazy. That's okay. We can have a dialogue about it. So that's going to be it for today. And so as I always say, I hope you're having a great day, and I'll see you on the next one.